The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, across the moat from Oakland, in the northern part of California. And my MO is to have the most interesting people on the face of the planet as guests. Today is no exception. Sara Lamnin, Hayward resident and graduate of State Hayward in California. How are you, Sara?
I am delighted to be here. I will do my best to be interesting today.
You are interesting by design. You're in city government, and I have taken an interest over the last 4 or 5 years in my city government in Alameda. And I guess Alameda is, your sister, Hayward's sister city? Close enough. And tell me how you decided to run for office. What influenced you? What made you go?
Yeah, so I was working in a nursing home in my first job out of college as a recreation therapist, and watching what was happening for patients, and found myself often in a role of advocacy, and was realizing that there was a piece of federal legislation that had enough support from both sides of the aisle to pass without debate, and the Speaker of the House wouldn't let it to the floor. And it would have helped the patients I was working with, and I said, you know what, I want that job. And not necessarily the Speaker of the House, but
right.
The idea that an elected official has 3 choices, basically. You can say no, not particularly useful, or instead you can say, look at this work that the community has said they wanted, they did the work to make it happen, and you can get out of the way. Or you can say, great work, I think you missed this piece, let's work together on this component that's missing. And I wanted to be one of those 2 and not this obstacle. And so started learning about things, and it just so happened that job was in Hayward. And in Hayward, you can know who the mayor is. You can sit down to lunch with the chief of police. And so started learning how does local government work. And I also thought the city is small enough to get some real things done, but has a lot of the societal issues that, for instance, Oakland does. And so there was real interesting work to be done there and real possibility to get that work done.
Okay, what holds back city government, not just in Hayward, but in your experience, what is it that's keeping city government from making more of an influence on the state in general?
It's an interesting question. Making an influence on the state, not entirely sure. I have to think about that one a little bit more. What makes it challenging to have things happen at the city level, and I suspect this is true at the state level as well, is the fact that we look to consensus. And when I started on council, I had been working to address homelessness for the previous 7 years. And I thought, okay, so what we need to do is this set of things. It's really clear. Let's go. I've now been elected. Let's go. And it took me 2.5 years to realize, you looking at this, you sort of city, are looking at this issue in a completely different way. Also represents the will of the people, so to speak.
Okay, now that's the will of the people. That changes almost from moment to moment. What surprises did you get from your constituents that you didn't really expect once you took office?
Yeah, I think it's the that we have such diverse perspectives on issue. I mean, it's very much like Rashomon. You know, if you're sitting in this chair at this time, it looks like this thing happened. And if you're sitting on the other side of the room, something completely different may have happened. And trying to navigate a policy that honors those two realities is not.
Yeah, and a lot of times this perspective is from which side of the aisle you're sitting on, or which side of the room, like you say, you're sitting on. Has it been easy, and has it been fun and enjoyable?
It has definitely been fun and enjoyable. I feel like it's work that I was meant to do, and I appreciate that real opportunity. It's an honor to do it. It hasn't always been easy.
All right. Has it been fun enough that you look at it kind of as a stepping stone to something else more powerful? Or are you, for the moment, satisfied with your lot?
I think for me it's about the work. So I'll come 2022, when I'm up for re-election again, I'll have been on the council 8 years, and a lot of what I went on council to get done will likely either have been done or is in good stead to get done. And so the question, and I'll be thinking about this over the next year actually, is, okay, am I ready to do different work? And who's doing that work? What's the body that governs that work? Because I really do like the policy component. So how do I get that work done?
Good. Mayor, perhaps? Or the Congress, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, mayor is essentially the same job, just with more of the ceremony. So not sure about that. But, you know, does county make sense? Given my background, I've done a lot of work around the CalPERS and retirement and pension issues. Does it make sense to go there or to try to go there? Does it make sense to the state legislature? I really haven't made a formal decision about any of that yet. Okay.
What are the major differences between state and local politics and federal politics? Is it just like, say, another decimal point or another X number of constituents? Or how do you feel that the two are connected, and what's the major disconnect?
Yeah, I think the county and cities, from my observation, I won't claim to be an expert, my observation would be that the county and cities are pretty similar, and that the difference between those and, for instance, the state and federal is the connection to the person, the implementation of that piece of legislation.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there an analogy to be made from what you've seen of local politics? What's going on federally now with this election? Are you surprised? Is there anything that's shocking to you? Is there anything that you see that, wow, this is a lot like city politics?
Yeah.
Or is Trump just an absolute aberration that you can't even include him in analyzing politics?
Yeah, I don't think we can do that, because very similar to the different perspectives thing that we talked about just a bit ago, you know, yes, Biden got the most votes of any president ever, and Trump got the second most. The idea that from where I sit, I can't understand why somebody would want him to continue governing.
Oh, of course not. But 70% of Republicans, and I'm assuming you're not one.
Correct.
Just
safe assumption,
off the top of my head, safe assumption. 70% of Republicans think that Biden didn't win fairly. Now, how could that be?
Right.
And that's a rhetorical question, I guess. But does that not shock you more than anything else?
It is shocking. Yeah, it is. Because how much more transparent can this voting process have been than it was this year? And how can you still think that something went wrong?
Well, how about in 2016 when Trump was running, and we knew he was a molester. We knew his philosophy was to take what you can get and screw everything. How was he elected in the first place? Was Hillary all that bad? I was not a fan of hers, and I thought I misjudged Trump's evilness, and I certainly didn't vote for him, but I thought it would be interesting theater when he was elected. And it really is, but it's the theater of the macabre, not the theater that we really wanted. What surprised you the most of his presidency? What's the number one thing?
The number one thing that he really was, that he never took the job seriously. That there was never a moment where that switch went on and went, oh, I really have a responsibility here that is for real, that is, I don't know what I'm doing. Let me learn about that. And for those who knew him, that probably wasn't a surprise. But I think I expected once you get there, there's a certain level of...
You'd want to. Now, I'm going to ask you, when it came out that he was basically separating children from their parents under, immigration, and he was keeping them in cages, and that these kids would literally never see their parents again. Did you, when you met a Trumpite after that, did you, like I do, lose immediate respect for in other words, if you didn't get it when he did that, and you're still a Trumpite, I really don't want to know from you. What I'm saying? And how do you do it? I'm a podcaster. I have a podcast network. I'm writing a book. I try for political purposes to keep things in order, but every day of my life I'm at odds with someone on Facebook about their idiocy. And some of them are bright people. And you don't know where their ideology is coming from. Are they afraid? Are they just reaching out? Do they not wear masks because the president told them to? Has it gotten to that point where they're not making decisions on their own? Are people ungovernable? Just, again, a lot of it is rhetorical. There are no real answers. Have you been absolutely shocked every day for 3 years?
I have been shocked at the level of support that continues. Each time you think, oh, well, that's the thing. That's clearly, everybody will see how bad that is. And nobody will continue. Oh, wait, they're continuing. I mean, I was at a meeting 2 days ago where somebody who seemed like a rational, intelligent person, just as you're saying, said, well, we're not sure about the outcome of the election. Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
It's
get
done.
The votes. Yeah. When CNN took 3 or 4 days to announce that Trump won, I think it was Arizona, who hadn't, Fox had predicted the winner, and that would have been over 270 votes, and it was that way. At first, I couldn't understand it, but their caution was directed in getting it right and making sure there were no setbacks, and that what they said was going to be acceptable. And then when it wasn't accepted, when they still fight it in courts with no evidence, no evidence of fraud, evidence of voter suppression, this, that, and the other thing, and they fight in states where fellow Republicans have won, even when he didn't win. So when they're fighting that, what are they saying to their fellow Republicans?
Yeah, exactly. And what are we saying to the people who have built the Republican Party? Or what is it we're saying to the people, what matters to you, or that you don't matter as a country? It's fascinating that your vote don't matter.
It is fascinating. Let's get on to what I was, when I had the prospect of talking to a city councilman from a major city. Wow, I thought I could ask about my favorite subject, which happens to be 420, Canada. And take it back to politics a little bit. I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago when they wanted to put Proposition 64 in. My statement at the time, and it still holds true, I would rather that cannabis was decriminalized rather than legalized. Mm-hmm. How do you respond to that?
So my first question would be, what in your mind is the difference?
Well, the difference being is the lack of regulation that goes with it when it's legalized, and what that means to the average consumer. 50% of cannabis, the old, so what do you call it? It used to be marijuana, and now it's a slur to call it marijuana. So everything's politically correct. But 50% of the folks that consume buy their product under the black market. So I guess there's an awful lot of dissatisfaction with legalization. Am I correct? Do you get that? Do you get that from your voters, your constituents, that they're unhappy in general with the law?
No, I think overall, sorry, there's a lot of different competing interests, right? So I hear from the industry that there's too much regulation, and I don't disagree. I hear from the community, some are ready for the industry to be legal and above, out of the black market. Some wish it wasn't. And I think you make a good point. I think we've gone too far in regulation. At the same time, the idea, and certainly I'm all for decriminalization, I think there is some standard, at least I'd like to think that there's some value in a standard of perhaps purity, perhaps understanding what the right dosage is to accomplish the goal, whether that be a medicinal goal or a recreational goal or an adult use goal. And I think that there's a way to, I think we've gone too far on one part of the spectrum, but I think it's completely possible to have some public safety standards, some research standards, without it being overly onerous.
Okay.
Maybe I'm naive.
What would you do differently if you had the power to change the law as it's written? What's the the main bugaboo from Sara's point of view?
I think the top priority is overtaxation. We've managed to both tax all along the processing pathway and tax all along the judicial pathway. So from the state government to the local governments, so I think that that would be my top priority.
Okay. Let me take time out a little bit and give kudos to the terrific school you went to, Cal State Hayward. My son's mother, the late Diane Satin, was an accounting professor at your school, and through her, back in the day, in the 90s, I got the opportunity to do a cable television show based on my passion, which was baseball. And it was called the Sports from the Top of the Hill. And it was just one of my favorite experiences in life. The folks at Hayward are really special. I want you to know that. And my memory of doing that really stands out in my personal life. It led me to a podcast network and meeting a bunch of good people. So I wanted to throw that in there. What was your major get from going to Cal State Hayward, as opposed to San Francisco State, where you probably could have gone, or Irvine, a lot of school, a lot of state colleges around to choose from. Why did you choose Hayward, and what did you derive out of it that really made you happy?
Yeah. So I did have my undergrad from San Francisco State, and my master's at Cal State Hayward. And what I loved about the university was the idea that so many, at that point I was looking towards public office at some point, and so many city officials had gotten their public administration degree from East Bay or from Hayward. That was that made it a dynamic place to be. Similarly, when I got my recreation degree from San Francisco State, that department had a lot of connections to the industry. So that, I think, is a wonderful thing about the Cal State system and Cal State Hayward's integration.
Good. I wanted to really pay kudos to those people because it's a great school.
Yeah, it really is.
All right. You weren't disappointed?
No. I ended up in the healthcare administration side of things, and the professor there, Tony Fogarty, is just excellent, and her knowledge base is really broad, and I use that stuff to this day. Beautiful.
Tell me about San Francisco State a little bit. What's the basic difference if I were an undergraduate and thinking of going to one or the other? Which, from an undergraduate standpoint, which would you recommend?
I think it really depends on the department. So San Francisco State, communications, ethnic studies, activism, and although Hayward has recently gotten more active, there's some new professors there that are doing more in community organizing. But San Francisco, of course, has the history of civil rights and so on. So I really think it depends on what the department is, and whether or not that department, like I said, has sort of active industry connections. For a long time, East Bay or Hayward had the really top-notch business department. I'm sure it still does. Just
Right. It does. And in the same building as the music.
They
right.
finally separated those, but it used to be that, which was always interesting. Yes.
It was. You'd be studying or whatever, and all of a sudden this beautiful music coming. And they did have a great program, and I'm sure they still do. How about living? Difference between living in the East Bay and in San Francisco. What's the adjustment?
I think the volume of people. San Francisco, massive city, especially by Bay Area standards. And in Hayward, that you're not going to be on top of each other. Economically, certainly we have overcrowding. That happens. But I was fascinated to visit people, my fellow students in San Francisco. And, okay, this used to be a living room, and now it's 2 bedrooms. And
right,
not saying that
exactly.
doesn't happen in Hayward, but it's not quite as, formalized as it is in San Francisco, or as long-standing expectation,
Okay. What do you tell your constituency about the prospects of recovery? Both, not just recovering from the disease itself, but financial recovery down the line. Is it possible that we'll ever get back to where we were?
I think we will. There is a lot of the industry hasn't gone away. But I also think we have to, as government, have kind of the New Deal perspective on things. And I think I thought this before COVID, and I think it's even more true now. We have to think about paying people to do the work we need done. That's a good role of tax dollars. And that was the WPA, putting people to work to build infrastructure in our communities. And we've done that to a slight degree with, infrastructure specifically. But we need contact tracers. We need what's the new conference infrastructure that happens if you are going to a total virtual environment? What are the things we need? Lab techs. There's industries that are under-resourced. And if we actually invest our recovery dollars in jobs and training and career pathways, I think our dollars will go a lot further.
Okay, that brings me to ecology. Where is Hayward making its mark on the green, so to speak?
Yeah, we make a big mark, actually. We just received a AA rating. We are one of the, I think it's 32 most green places in the country. We have
nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, because Biden, for instance, apologized for saying that there would be no fracking. So this is the kind of world we're in. To get elected, one has to have instead of educating the folks on getting out of the oil business, they just want to get elected. They'll say whatever it is to get elected. I'm not taking anything away from Biden because thank God he got elected. But it was the idea of don't just sell your soul on some things just as, going with the territory. Was there anything that you had to sell out on to be elected? It doesn't have to be major, but anything you had to go, this is what has to be done.
I would like to say that I haven't, and it may just be that I occasionally have a mind like a still sieve and I've forgotten something. But I have done my best to really say, okay, if I can't live with this, if it's not true, then I don't want to do that. I mean, certainly there are compromises in policy, I think. Recently we're talking about rent control versus ownership, and those shouldn't be opposite sides of the spectrum. But in order to get to equity and economic opportunity in our community, I felt like I needed to say, you know what, I can't do the short-term solution here that the community is asking for. I need to do the long-term solution, and I don't know how to get us there without pushing this.
Okay. Sara, if you decide that after a year of thinking about it that you're going to go on, you're going to do something different, get out of politics, stay in politics, mayor, city, Congress, what would you like to be remembered most for as a city council person? When people look back on what you did, what do you want them to remember?
I would love them to know that this thing, some topic, got better, that homelessness got solved, that there was a clear career pathway for people in Hayward to be successful in their lives, that there was that our government functions in a way that includes people in the decisions that affect their lives, that the things that I've worked on mattered and made a difference, made it better.
Okay, that's a great answer. And you sound, just from your tone of voice, you sound totally satisfied with the work you've done.
Totally satisfied. I'd always love it to be better and more, but I can look at where we were on homelessness, for example, when I started on council, and now we have more affordable housing coming in. We have a navigation center. We have the downtown streets team, and we're starting on an actual strategic plan to address homelessness in Hayward in a meaningful way. That's a complete strategy shift from where we were in 2014. Really excited about that.
Now, final question. Is there anything you regret about not having accomplished? Not you having not accomplished, but the city or people you couldn't influence on a certain subject, on a certain way of doing things. Anything you regret along those lines?
Yeah, I think getting conversation moving faster around pension and healthcare costs was a much bigger mountain than I thought it would be.
Okay.
When I started in 2014, there was a big contract dispute in the city, and it was clear that that was really about this looming deficit, that the promises of the past weren't paid for. And it is such a politically charged topic that getting people to have a productive conversation about that and to say, look, promises of the past weren't paid for. What are we going to do about it? What can we do about it? And not have that be an instant death knell for somebody's political career or instant fear about I'm not going to be able to take care of myself or my family. Are you going to take away my health care coverage? None of those are the things that are productive in a conversation. And having inspiring, instigating, facilitating that productive conversation has been incredibly difficult.
So there have been frustrations. It hasn't all been roses and, going through it. And every day is Pollyanna type thing. You have been frustrated by things along the line.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So I'm just confirming that you're human.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Hey, Sara, first-time guest, you're terrific.
Well, likewise. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
I hope you'll come back and stay in touch, and I hope whatever you decide, you're happy with, that you have no regrets. I'm an old guy, and I look back, and there are things that can't say I was happy with everything, but you go through life, so you got to say, this is the best for me. I made the decisions I made at the time. I hope that happens when you make your decision.
Yeah, me too. Which is why I'm not rushing into making a decision. I got to do something I can live with.
Beautiful. Hey, thank you again. You're terrific. Please come back.
I would love to. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Sara Lamnin, City Council in Hayward, California, right down the road from Alameda. There's no moat around Hayward. That's nice. I consider Alameda to be special in a lot of ways and needing improvement in a lot of ways. Maybe you'll come up here and be a council person. Probably not.
Then I'd have to be a carpetbagger, and that's probably not my best political move.
Well, it worked for Hillary for a while back in the days.
True.
All right. Hey, listen, again, I thank you, and I thank everybody for listening. It's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tycho, the weak link of it all. Happy trails, and again, thank you, Sara Lamnin. Adios. The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.